Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Gray Area here on the Black Man Unfiltered Network, simulcasting on the Sparta HQ Network. I am Mr. Bennett, joined by my partner as always. Uh-oh. I barely heard it. Man, check that
Hang on,
again.
I'm muted. That's why.
This
Okay.
is Sparta!
There we go. The ghost of Sparta, a.k.a. Peter, a.k.a. Panayotis. Yasu, my brother. What is going on?
What is going on, my man? How was your weekend?
Uh, very interesting. It was, filled, sort of the young women in the house keep it interesting. And so,
Oh
my
boy,
wife and I,
I'm scared.
we're trying to keep the peace, and we're just trying to navigate having these women in the house. But every day I'm getting reminded, it's like, yeah, they need to grow up quick and find
Get
their
out.
own. And we we really need to be empty nesters. But other than that, though, things are going pretty good here. And yeah, I mean, last week was pretty exciting. I went down to DC area. My nephew graduated from high school, and he's got a full basketball scholarship to play at Morehouse University in Atlanta. So,
Mhm.
pretty excited, being in that environment, and seeing where he's going. So yeah, I mean, just watching, a lot of these young people, they scare me a lot of times in that I think they're certainly a lot smarter than certainly I was at their age, but they don't have necessarily the experience or necessarily the common sense that they might have had at my age at when I was that in my early 20s. So it's like this trade-off that despite their brilliance, and they're able to move socially and whatnot, but there's just certain things, there's just certain rules that, as much as you try to tell them as parents, and even my nephew. So this is actually my grandnephew. It's my nephew's son,
Mhm.
and even he was saying, you can, as a parent, you can say all types of things to them, but sometimes the information has to come from another source. I mean, you love them to death, and there's nothing you wouldn't do for them, but sometimes the messenger needs to be changed a bit. And so so that's kind of where we are right now. Like I said,
It's
it's very
funny
interesting
you
time.
said that
Mhm.
because I had an event this weekend, obviously, and except me driving back and forth, I ended up crashing at my girlfriend's, right?
Mhm.
And I was talking to her son, and he doesn't have a great relationship with his father. So she even told me right before the show was started, like, I don't know what you said to him, but it hit on the nail.
Yep.
I was just trying to get him get his head on straight because he needs to get, a nice hard kick in the ass sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I think, like you said, sometimes it needs to come from a better source than a family member, or
Yeah,
not
for sure.
immediate family, I should say.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes, as you said, it's not even so much a kick in the butt. It's just a different voice. It's the weirdest thing. But it
Mhm.
even happens. I mean, even between spouses, sometimes, like my sister-in-laws could say something to my wife that will probably resonate more than if I say it. So sometimes that can be fun. But I'm at an age now where it's like, it used to bother me back in the day, but I'm at a point now where it's, look, as long as you get the message, if it came from me, great. If it doesn't come from me, I'm good with that also.
Mhm.
So it's not I'm beyond just having to be. I don't want to be right. I just want the situation to be right. You know what I'm saying? However it gets there, by whomever it does, like, I don't take any pride or ego to say, yeah, I'm the reason why things are the way they are. I just want stuff to work. And I think my wife is more and more getting to that stage in life also, where she just wants things to work. She's still passionate about, especially when it comes to her kids, but she realizes that sometimes you don't have necessarily the capacity sometimes to deal with certain things, and sometimes, again, you need that out. That's why those aunties are important, or those uncles
Yeah.
are important, and just those people who they have a certain, they can look at things kind of like from the outside, and have a different perspective on things. So that's always a dynamic, and we're still kind of fleshing these things out. But it's interesting, though. I think my oldest daughter got it, because there was like an exchange the other night, and she was getting on my youngest, and she like defended us, like she was like talking about how much we do for them and all that kind of stuff, and so it was like, oh, I guess we did something right because she kind of stepped up. But I think a lot of that had to do with her moving out. I mean, the fact that she's at medical school, she's here through August, but she's at medical school and just living on her own and getting perspective in terms of how good she had it. I think that does a lot too in terms of their perspective. So, like I said, it may have to be just for their own good that they kind of move on and get into different lanes or whatnot, so they can kind of see things, but they can't take things for granted. And so, so that's kind of the season that we're in, and trying to navigate that. But as far as her and me, wife and I, we're solid. Season 30, so we're pretty solid, and it's just about managing everything else around us. But I'm glad that we're kind of on the same page, and that just makes things a whole lot easier
Of
when you
course.
do that. So
I
so
told you before, bro. Like between you and CQ, you guys got the two best marriages I ever seen. That's why when it comes to my personal relationship, that's why I ask you guys for advice usually.
Yeah, well, yeah, all we can give is, again, what might have worked for us, and that's the thing too. I mean, because we seek for wisdom from from all types of people. People have got older kids than us and whatnot, and so we're always, we're not so closed off that we can't listen to other perspectives. Like we got this, and I think the
Mhm.
more and that's going to probably factor into our conversation tonight, because certainly this topic has always interested me, certainly over the last few years, certainly since the pandemic and whatnot,
Oh,
how you've
absolutely.
had these billion-dollar companies just balling, rolling in money, and then a couple moves here or there and they're out of business, or you find out that the company really wasn't founded on a good footing. And a lot of times there is you know you just realize, like, oh man, this, like, what was really going on behind the scenes. And so we're going to talk about that tonight, and this is just out of curiosity. Again,
Mhm.
we're not balling like that as far as having these billion-dollar companies or what have you, but at the same time, you're and I appreciate the thumbnail as well. Shout out to BMU. Appreciate.
I just want to know where the hell did he find that picture of me?
So yes, appreciate you as always, sir, for what you do with us. But yeah, I think you certainly nailed it. I certainly you nailed it tonight. So really appreciate that. But yeah, but so we just want, just as a again, and the gray area. This whole show is about a conversation. Again, if we knew how to run billion-dollar companies, we'd be running them. Okay, so but this is just us, just because sometimes we're impacted by that. I'll talk about that in a little bit, as well. How how a lot of these moves when companies go out of business, how they impact not only just the employees, how they impact communities, and how things can kind of go awry. And again, you have other content creators who can certainly go into more detail and give you every bit of how the company went out of business. I'm going to highlight one guy tonight, and so I just found the conversation fascinating, so I just wanted to kind of go and and do that. So my man says, the advice Sparta gave it to me when they said you were being investigated. So
That's what I said to that.
so that's kind of that's kind of where it is. But yeah, but just your overall take on in terms of, or let me ask you this: like, are there any companies that you recall or remember that you thought, this company's so solid, whatever, they're going forever, and then you
Do
realize it's like, oh snap, they're not around anymore. So what comes to mind for you, and certainly for those in the chat, what comes to mind to you in terms of companies that you thought were on a solid fitting, that they'd be around forever, and you turn around and you realize they're not here anymore. What
There are
companies come to
two
mind to you
actually.
guys?
The first one is Blockbuster actually,
Yeah.
because even at the time when Blockbuster was in the Hemi and towards the end of their lifespan, they I didn't think they were gonna go down because I thought digital media was gonna be the thing at the time. I think it was a trend, and I think everybody's gonna go to the physical media because you don't really own physical media. It's something that you buy, but you still don't physically own the digital media. If some reason they pull off those the rights of the platform, you lose
Mhm.
that. And we don't release that. You might be buying that the movie on Amazon Prime for argument's sakes,
Right.
but when the company lose the contract with whatever company they are with, you lose the movie because they have agreements, they have contracts.
Right.
Second one is Eric said in the comments, Toys R Us. Toys R Us, I didn't think they were ever gonna go out of business, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
And
again, it's toys, but part of tonight also we're going to be talking about is, and we got some good ones in here. So again, Suncoast. I remember Suncoast video growing up. I mean, yeah, Circuit City, Blockbuster, said Kmart, Sears. Again, we're going to
Here's
talk
another
about
one
that.
that went out of business a long time ago, and nobody realized it because they weren't as popular as Blockbuster. It was Hollywood Videos.
Yep, I remember those sales
But
got
the reason
too.
they went out, from my understanding, I might be completely wrong, so don't quote me on this, was Blockbuster actually put them out of business because Blockbuster was so much bigger than Hollywood Video was.
Yeah, yeah. Nah, no question about it. And so we're going to talk about some of that tonight. And again, there's a usually a lot of these bankruptcies come from, like they say, death by a thousand cuts, and
Mhm.
so you're not necessarily going to pin it on one thing. And like I said, you certainly got some creators that really do a good job of of um explaining these things in a digestible form, because you have universities like business schools study like the rise and fall of certain companies, as that's like a coursework that they do. So you can spend years talking about what went wrong in a company. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to necessarily avoid those mistakes, or that you won't be tempted. Because again, once that money starts coming in, do you start taking shortcuts? Do you start and start putting the profits over the product, which I think is very hard. Like I didn't put, I could have put a dozens of companies certainly in the slide deck tonight, but I just want to highlight a few. But I was just reading recently, like Starbucks is kind of in trouble, or that they're having issues right now because, one, people are not always in a position to pay $10 for an average cup of coffee. And then also keep in mind that Starbucks used to be like an experience. Like Starbucks was, and especially in the 90s when it was really starting to boom, that was like a culture. You went to Starbucks after work, you did business there, you had business meetings there. It was like this lounge environment, and they were giving you like a total experience. And even though now you still have people obviously going there, I mean, I see the lines at Starbucks, in the morning, but it's like, I mean, as far as the coffee, like, is it the greatest coffee in the world that you're willing to spend for a tall blonde, $8, $9, $10 a shot? Plus the fact that um, they sell K cups now. I mean, so if you really, now again, I know they don't have like the official baristas in obviously in your house, and they got different things that they make there and whatnot now, like the smoothies and the lattes and things of that nature. But again, you can get a K cup and get your Starbucks there. So it's like
So
how do you justify that kind of spending? Or people are just not in love with it the way they used to. In fact, even if you look at the stores, I said early on they were big. They because again they had lounges, and you would meet someone at 7 p.m. for a business meeting at Starbucks. Now these stores are a lot smaller. They don't necessarily want people. It's basically just drive-ins, because that experience is gone. People aren't doing that anymore. So what are your thoughts on that?
So
That
I have a hard time believing that was Starbucks for two reasons. One, the lines are so out the door usually. Two, I have two Starbucks in walking distance, less than 5 minutes.
mhm.
One has a drive-through, one doesn't. One has a lounge, one does not. And I, like me being me, spoke to the manager. Like, yo, are you guys losing your lease soon or something? Because you guys open another one. Like, that's a corporate thing. We had nothing to do with that. He goes, we just renewed about for another 10 years. So we're not going anywhere from here.
Mhm.
So, but what was hurting their business was the Dunkin' next to me, and they had a drive-through,
Mhm.
and they don't have a lounge area, but they do have a drive-through, and that was hurting their business. So they
Right.
opened a second location. Literally, now you have it's potentially like an L shape. Starbucks, Dunkin', Dunkin'.
Right.
So and the Dunkin' is owned by the same owner for all the area around here because my ex used to work for them.
Right. Right.
So I have a hard time believing that they're struggling.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned Duncan, because that is an example, and we're going to talk about that tonight also, how a company can pivot. So again, if you're a Gen X generation, it wasn't Duncan, it was Dunkin' Donuts.
I remember that actually.
And the commercials were about donuts. Coffee came like later. That became like okay. Also because people, I guess maybe they started thinking healthier. It's like, we can only sell so many donuts in the world, and people are more
Mhm.
health conscious now and not eating stuff. But there's a whole lot of money to be made in coffee and smoothies and lattes and all these other type of drinks that have nothing to do with donuts. And they were able to pivot and actually change the name of the company just to Dunkin'. I mean, it's not like, even though they still sell donuts, that's for most people. Like, I'd be very surprised that the basis of their revenue comes from making donuts. It's from the drinks that, in a lot of ways, from a health perspective, are probably worse than the donuts. I mean, if you look at some of these frops and whatnot, and how much sugar and whatnot is in them, they're probably worse for you. But it's a booming business.
Yeah,
And so they were able to pivot their operation, say, look, we're going all in on this. Yeah, we'll keep the donuts there, but the donuts kind of faded to the back. And so they're and so those are things that again, for the good companies, for the companies that are still around, that's one of the things that you're able to do. They're able to pivot from see the trends and make the calls at the right time when you have to make the calls. And so that's an example of a company that is, I guess, flexible enough to make those kind of moves. You know what I'm
I'll
saying?
give you another example of that. And before I use that example, you're right 100%. I've seen people put like extra sugar or extra creamer, and like it kind of kills. For me, Dunkin' is not good a good brew of coffee. It's more for the people go for a flavor, not for the caffeine for coffee. That's my personal opinion. But if you want a good, strong caffeine coffee, yeah, you definitely will go to Starbucks. Now, Dunkin' is a good example of that, because you have another example, Domino's. And because they were, if you remember back in the 90s and early 2000, there were Domino's Pizza. They took the pizza out of there, and there's just Domino's now, because people changed their habits of eating. Now everybody's getting pizza. They have some other things too. Those are good examples. I mean, you have to adapt to your clientele, and not all of them do that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Nah, no question. No question.
All
Got a
right,
lot
I'll
of guys in the
give you
chat tonight. So we got, obviously, our guy Anton. Appreciate you being in here tonight. We got my man Eric in here. Edaman Williams in the chat tonight. Certainly appreciate you being here. So really, thanks for being here, and certainly sticks around and to be a part of the conversation. And we got our guy, certainly Liberty Twitcher, certainly talking about Starbucks as well. And just like I was saying earlier, how often the drinks are even worse than the donuts. And certainly BMU's talking about, yeah, I mean, they had that decline in sales for multiple quarters between 2024 and 2025. And again, the competition is also increasing as well. And again, it's not like I'm not the biggest coffee drinker in the world. I know some people, it's like Coke and Pepsi. I buy what's on sale. If I want a Coke or a Pepsi or whatever, and I usually use the zero product, but I'll buy whatever's on sale. Like, I'm not so bought in. You can't, if you gave me like a blind taste test, okay, this is Starbucks coffee and this is Dunkin' coffee, or this is McDonald's coffee or whatever. I'm not that uh specific. Like, when I was traveling down to Georgia, you had a Starbucks right outside our hotel. But I was getting coffee from the breakfast station in the hotel. I would get my coffee there. That was enough for me. But you had guys who would still go and stand in line and, again, pay $10 for a tall block. I mean, it was just,
See,
I guess,
there's
because
so many
yeah,
other companies is better out there that you can make at home. I'll give you a good example. Is Black Rifle Coffee. Their coffee is one of the best coffees I ever have, and you can get it in a bag, like you can use it in your coffee maker, or you can use it as a K cup. I
that's
do
right. That's right.
personally, because I think like it. That's what works convenient for my lifestyle and my home lifestyle.
Right.
But K cups are expensive too,
Yeah.
because for, I think, is it 100 cups, I'm paying like $60 at BJ's, something like that, 50,
Which is
60
still
bucks.
less than $1 a cup of coffee. So you're still talking
It
about 10 times the amount if you went to a Starbucks and had, again, a barista make it for you and whatnot. So again, it's and even said Liberty Twitcher, again, a plain black coffee at Starbucks is very expensive, but it's still more expensive than that which you can make at home. Or certainly it's still more expensive that if you had a K cup. BMU is saying, I've never heard of this company. This might be a regional thing, because I don't think we have any Dutch brothers in our
never heard of
area.
it personally.
A legitimate competitive Starbucks, not because it's bigger. The threat is because it's growing much faster and attracting younger customers. And that's also an issue. How do you stay relevant to a changing market? At the same time, how do you stay loyal to a market? because one of the companies I'm going to bring up, they forgot about their customers or their legacy customers. So how do you attract new customers? Well, at the same time, how do you keep your existing customers happy as well? That's always the risk that you have to take as well. So you have again, Dutch brothers having a huge bunch of sugar. Again, it may be all those things you say in Liberty may be 100% correct. But again, they're attracting young people, so I guess young people don't care. And again, I thought we were supposed to be healthier. What happened to that generation that was getting away from stuff? Now, Eric is an OG like myself. He's like Keurig is in a he hates K cups. I think he likes we used to brew the coffee in the percolator. You put your coffee in the cup and the metal can or whatever, and you knew your coffee was ready when it started to percolate through the glass thing at the top. Again, if you're
And
old school
that's
like
a great way to make coffee, or
yeah,
put the grounds and like the old school coffee makers too. I mean, they were very popular in the '90s and early 2000s. But K cups are very convenient for people who don't need a full what's called a full pot.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if just like make myself, I make 1 cup of coffee in the morning, and I usually drink it, whatever I'm doing, and I'm out the door.
yeah,
Now, if I make even a half a pot, that's way too much. I'm not gonna make
yeah.
a pot just for one person. It makes no
And again,
sense.
I remember back in the '80s, it was so cool. Like if you had like a Mr. Coffee machine,
Yeah,
it was
that's
like
what I had.
programmable. So like you could set a timer, and as soon as you got up in the morning, got yourself ready, 8 a.m., you're going to work or whatever, a fresh pot of coffee is waiting for you when you get downstairs for breakfast. I mean, I don't know if anybody does that kind of thing anymore or
And the
owns
nice
like
thing
a
about K cups too, you can get those refillable cups, and so you literally it's the same thing as a Mr. Coffee. You
yeah,
can literally you pop it open, you put the grounds in, close it, pop the lid, hit what your program strong or whatever, and go from the and let
yeah.
to the rest.
And you still have people that do that. People I know people who go to certain stores, like especially like Wegmans or
Mhm.
what's the high end supermarket out here? Get having the brain freeze right now, but I know there
BJ's,
it's like what's that?
BJ's.
No, no, one of those high end Whole Foods. And they
Oh,
have like
I guess.
they have like beans. Like you literally buy the beans. You don't even grind them because some people they either have their own grinder at home or you get them ground, but you literally buy them by the scoop, your beans and whatnot, and they tend to be fresher and you do your own. Some people are kind of like their own baristas in a way, but some people just want they just want BJ.
Yeah, I saw that right. I'm waiting for your finish, so I make a comment. So
So
maybe I know you like my BJ's.
oh gosh, that's so it's going. I was like, "Where's he going with this?" And I forgot you kind of slid that in there.
No,
Pause that
I
as
mean
well.
BJ's the store, not the BJ he's thinking of, but like
So,
he likes BJ's from Greek Men, I guess.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, but let's get into this a little bit. I just want to kind of highlight some stores again. There's yeah, exactly. Pause again, sliding in. But I just want to highlight just a few companies. Again, there's hundreds of companies that have gone out of business. Like I said, certainly since COVID, a lot of chains, stores that have gone since then. Again, I'm not going to highlight every instance, and we can spend, like I said, a lot of time certainly going through these. But I just want to just a few one to highlight, just talking about why some fail. So again, this one here coming from this website, 10 biggest failures of all time. Now I'm not going to go through all 10. I'm going to talk about just some of the ones that made the news cycle, the ones that were certainly very big news at the time. So again, some of these are just outright because of just scamming people, right? So again, Theranos was this company, and they were making these blood test machines, and I was supposed to like revolutionize things, whatever. And people were making a thing about, okay, this female self-made billionaire. But again, the problem is that the tech never worked and that the machines were wildly inaccurate. And which you had some whistleblowers that came out and basically told people, it's like, look, this is a scam. And at the end of the day, this lady, Elizabeth Holmes, and there was another guy, I guess, oh, yeah, Sonny Balwani, they went to jail
Mhm.
because they were basically defrauding people. So you have some guys who some people who made their money from basically selling snake oil or technology that didn't work, and they're out of business as a result of it. Enron, that was a huge scandal that came up. So again, you had like that was like a conglomerate of companies. I think MCI. I think MCI became WorldCom, and I think they merged with Enron as well. But certainly they were using a lot of accounting practices again to hide fake profit to fake profits and hide debt. Enron stock, the fallout from that went from $90 a share down to $1. 20,000 employees lost their jobs and retirement savings. And again, several CEOs, like again, Jeff Skilling, went to federal prison. So you certainly have those instances as well, where you just have companies that just do are just bad business or fake business, and they at the end of the day they just get caught at some point in time. Now, again, this is something that this is an example of a company where you kind of slit your own throat by not adapting, and you basically embolden your competition. So again, if you grew up, like I said, in the '90s, obviously you had Barnes and Noble, you had Borders. Again, I used to hang out. My wife and I, when we were first married, we was like, "What do you want to do? Let's go to Borders and just chill, grab a coffee or whatever that was there," because I guess some of these stores had Starbucks in them or whatever, and we just hang out for the night. It was just like it was better than going to a library. And so you would go out there. But again, the early 2000s, Borders was a titan of the book world. But instead of developing its own e-commerce platform, it outsourced its online big books sales to Amazon. And we all know what happened with Amazon. Whereas Barnes and Noble launched the Nook, Borders ignored ebooks and continued to focusing on CDs and DVDs just as streaming was taken over. And, so we're going to get into that also a little bit. But again, as a result of that, 10,000 employees and nearly 400 stores were lost. The chain declared bankruptcy in 2011. And it became a classic example of what happens when legacy businesses, again, fail to adapt. And that's the big thing. I mean, you got to understand that the way people consume information, you have to be mindful of that. And again, you may still have people who, again, want their books, want their hard copy books. Some people are afraid of, digitized books and information, but some people still want that. But you still got to adapt with the times. And now, like if you buy most computers now, most don't even come with a. I just bought last month. I bought me a DVD burner, like a Blu-ray DVD burner, because I still have a lot of DVDs of movies and entertainment that I have. But if I bought a laptop today, they're probably not going to have a DVD ROM in it. And so, so again, I bought that in order to maintain the collections that I have. But that whole technology, VHS, CDs, DVDs, all that stuff is out the window now. So again, but your thoughts on Borders and just bookstores in general? I'm actually kind of surprised that Borders is still open, to be honest with you. I mean, Barnes and Noble is still open.
So we had a Barnes and Noble here for a little time. That's when towards the end of their lifespan, they opened about 5 or 6 years later. They went out of business. Then a Book a Million opened up, and they went out of business. So bookstores around here do not survive at all. Everybody's buying digitally or through Amazon.
Yeah.
It's funny because I see the Amazon driver all the time, and I got to know him by his name pretty much because there's usually the same one who delivers through my community. And it's a good convenient factor too. You have to almost understand in these businesses, when you open a store, you don't only have to worry about the product, you have to worry the employees, you have to worry about your insurance, the overhead, the electric, the insurance, all this other stuff that we don't know because we don't own businesses, and at least that scale business.
Yeah.
So if I'm surprised how bookstores even made money at one point because people are popular there. They're popular, but I always saw people reading the book in the store.
Right.
When they're done with the coffee and reading the book, they leave it and dump balance. So how you make now? If they made a rule you couldn't read the book in the store, you have to buy it. Now I can make sense now. Yeah, why are they doing that?
Right. But it's almost like a movie theater because again, certainly for Barnes and Noble, most of them have a Starbucks in there. So it's almost like when they say when you go to the movies, you don't make money. The movie theaters don't make money for the movie. They make money from the sales of concessions and popcorn and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it's like you're willing to take a loss on the books or the book sales in exchange for the other stuff that you're going to buy there, or just the environment that people are willing to patronize, making a lot more money from
Mhm.
the Starbucks partnership than they are from the actual book sales. But it's certainly something that people are consuming differently. But it's interesting the fact that you and I go to Comic-Con every year,
Mhm.
that the people who are somewhat still loyal to books are those people. Comic books, graphic novels, fictional novels, and whatnot. People still, you would think, with these younger generations going to these books, and we even had interviewed, authors of fictional books and whatnot on a Gray Area show. You know, um, I guess one question we never
Oh,
asked is like,
hang
are you
out.
guys right on the Hangout? Yeah. So, are you worried about, okay, will people buy you? Obviously, some are self-published; they publish their own books, but if people are starting to consume their books in other ways in digital media, that shouldn't you make that pivot to digital media versus selling physical books? But it seems like in those communities, having a physical book is still valued in that space rather than the digital medium. So I find that particular niche a little bit different, in that they still appreciate the books or the comic books having the physical. Plus, there's also a market for those. I mean, we all know about people who have their comic book collections and they can sell for a lot of money if you keep them in pristine condition. Some
Absolutely.
people still trade that, but it's just interesting that that community still values published books and materials versus just going to, I'll
Eh,
just look at something online.
One thing I do know from, because I know a couple comic book store owners, one rule they always had: you cannot read the comic book in the store without purchasing it,
Yeah.
and that's a big thing. And like, I think that's what dooms bookstores. You're literally sitting there and reading the whole book. Some people can blow through a whole book in one day, in a few hours.
Yeah.
That's what they do. So,
Absolutely.
like, how, and like, I will kill on this. It's a different feeling when you have the paper in your hand versus a tablet.
Yeah.
I can push back on that.
Right.
I agree 100% on that.
Hmm.
But what I don't agree is you going to the store and reading. This is why this lifetime thing is going on, because books have being published since the 1800s.
Hmm.
So now, why are they going away? Because
Yeah.
people are now buying books because they're reading them in there. That's one, and they're digital. They're cheaper digital than actual buying the book thing.
Yeah. Says Anton, saying both Marvel and DC have apps where you can read their entire library. Yeah, yeah, and it's probably cheaper if when you consider how much, if you had to buy their whole library, or guys, how much money you spent over the years to collect and to to have these titles. And again, and back in the day, you always bought two, right? You bought a comic to read and a comic to save. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So again, it was like you were paying double to get the same information. But let's move on from here. So we got again some other scandals. So again, this is one of the newer ones. Again, due to corruption. So again, every now I know a lot of people into crypto, and again, I don't know as much about that field and not heavily invested in crypto. But certainly, this was one when this was going on. This was major headlines that they had this guy Sam Bankman-Fried, who launched FTX, which was one of the leading uh, um, uh, uh, crypto trading companies, built a $32 billion empire, but behind the scenes, FTX was allegedly funneling money and funds to his own hedge fund, Alameda Research. And so the fallout from that is like when the house of cards collapsed, $8 billion in customer assets vanished overnight. And obviously, I think this guy actually did the fall of FTX was so massive that it shook the entire cryptocurrency industry. Now, again, I think that industry is still going on. I don't think that people are going anywhere. And certainly with the current administration, I think they're certainly investing in crypto, and it made a lot of money apparently from crypto. So I think that's a help to bolster the entire industry. But again, another example of when there's fraud, that people can certainly certainly lose their shirt from a lot of bad investors. Also want to acknowledge tonight we got our guy Craig Lucas all the way from the UK. Big supporter of the channel, certainly, and here and on the Sparta HQ network. But I want to just acknowledge him as well. He gives us a lot of dap and what he does to support us. So appreciate that. And Anton, I remember this. The Miami Heat's arena was named after this company. Yeah, FTX. But again, it was like for a lot of these investors, it's like the money, was it like legitimate money? Was it paper, or was it a legitimate or not? Enron Field, I remember that certainly back in the day when Enron was a big thing as well.
Another good
Yeah.
example is Red Robin almost got bankrupt because they were caught doing some. I don't remember exactly what they were doing, but that was one train company you didn't want to use for a while because they got caught scamming people right and left.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
gotcha, gotcha. Got
you
another
go
one here, and again, I'm not going through all 10. I'm just highlighting the big ones. Probably the biggest one ever was the Lehman Brothers. Again, the collapse that broke the global economy. Again, over 600 billion in assets was essentially lost. So again, they got caught up in buying again those subprime mortgages leading up to the 2008 financial crisis. Had a bunch of people getting taking out these mortgage loans and realizing that they couldn't pay. And so once that housing market collapsed, since Lehman had so much of their money invested in that they ultimately went bankrupt at the end. But again, Lehman Brothers was around for a long time. And again, it was also just due to greed that they collapsed. But that took the whole business, not only them but also automakers, all these entities that crashed. There was a lot. There was trillions of dollars in personal assets that was lost by people because of Lehman's investment, especially in housing. Because for most people in this country, your house is pretty much your main asset. Now, again, you may debate and argue if you don't own the house outright, is it truly an asset? But for a lot of people, they do count owning a home as an asset. But it's really not an asset until you actually sell it off and make a profit from it. But that being said, for a lot of people, it affected them greatly. And this is what happens when companies fail. What impact it has on certainly the public, the investors, and those have stakes in those companies. There's a lot of things can go awry. And we talked about this Blockbuster. Now, again, Blockbuster is another example of not being able to see the future before it happens. So it says here in 2000, a tiny DVD by mail company called Netflix. So if you guys remember those red boxes that were outside of your drugstore or 7-Eleven store or something like that, that's how Netflix got started.
I
Tiny
didn't know that
DVD
like
mail. What's that?
I don't remember being outside drugstores
I
like
believe
that.
so. Also, I think you also Redbox. I think they were also
Redbox, I
outside as well.
remember.
Redbox, but I think if I recall, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought um, uh, uh, Netflix was also doing something with DVD outside as well. But they also did by mail. Call Netflix offered to sell itself to Blockbuster for 50 million. Blockbuster laughed them out the room. Instead of embracing streaming, they stuck to late fees and retail stores and completely underestimated the digital wave. By 2010, Blockbuster fell for bankruptcy. Netflix is now worth over 200 billion, while Blockbuster has just one store in Oregon that exists as a meme more than a business. So again, it's just an example of here's an idea that they just didn't think would fly, or they might have been just comfortable with how business was going. And I think that can happen to anyone. You think things are good, that you don't have to change, that you don't have to pivot. But again, you want to make sure that you want to bring the customer base that you spend so much time building. You certainly want to bring them with you, but you can't be afraid to invest in the future as well. So it's just one decision changed the outlook of Blockbuster.
Mhm.
And no, but now me personally, I was never a fan of Blockbuster because I could never get the title that I wanted. That was the frustrating thing. If you want it like for the weekend, if you wanted to go and get a new release or whatever, you had to get there. You had to basically get it by Wednesday if you wanted to watch it on Saturday. Because again, by the time you got there, the only movies that were left were movies that were like 5 years old or whatever. I mean, it was like you weren't, the main titles or the newest titles or whatever. Those came very quickly, and they also charged um, the
I
most
actually
for them.
found a trick to that, believe it or not, when I was when I was younger. So I became a couple of my friends, and I became friends with some of the employees there. And I was like, "What's the trick, guys? Like most people return their DVDs movies usually on a Wednesday or a Thursday, but Wednesday they don't have enough time to put them out. The new
Right.
movies always came out on a Thursday. If you get there around between 2 and 3 o'clock, you got them. And every time, I don't care if it was a game or movie or whatever, I always found it on anything I needed because I went on a Thursday, as always, not on a Friday.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to get there before 3 o'clock. That's always a catch.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I was always going after work with it. So, like I said, you definitely got to be more strategic if you want to get in and get those newest releases. But the biggest one here that they're listing, even though Lehman Brothers again $600 billion in worth, but certainly all these things happen at the same time. You had the Lehman Brothers fallout, and then you had the GM fallout in 2009. So again, 2009 they filed for bankruptcy for $78.7 billion in losses, but they got a government bailout. Lehman Brothers didn't, but certainly GM did, and apparently they were able to turn around. But they're saying it remains the biggest industrial failure in history. But part of their issue was again innovation. It says from clunky designs to bloated deals and obsession with gas guzzling SUVs. So again, if you remember, all these people were buying Escalades, Cadillac Escalades back in the day, or those big Suburbans, or the Lincoln Navigators, and that just seemed to be the big thing. But then once gas started going up, especially if you remember in our area, Hurricane Sandy, and how gas price or what happened in New Orleans with the hurricanes there that took that out, gas prices jumped overnight. So you have people paying over $100, 150 dollars to fill up their gas tanks because they had these big remember the Hummer craze?
I was about to say that the
The
Hummers won
H2, and then
yeah.
they came out with the smaller H3, but everybody had the Hummers, and some of them they put the spinning hubcaps on them and whatnot, and people just wanted these big, gaudy vehicles.
Don't get
And
me wrong,
that was
it
so
looked cool. It looked very cool in my
Mm.
opinion.
Yeah.
But there was just a Chevy body on it. That's what it was. Nothing really crazy on it. Like
Mhm.
the skeleton was a Chevy. I think it was Silverado or something like shit like that. It was a Chevy body, but with a different frame. That's
Yeah.
what it was.
Yeah,
But yeah,
few
I know
people
people like
actually had the money or bought the real, because actually the original Hummer, 'cause I think Arnold, he was like a big promoter because he loved the Hummer itself. So I think he
Mhm.
invested a lot in the promotion of it. So he
He
had like the
was.
real one. The
That's
real one
correct.
is massive. I mean, you think the H2 is big, the Hummer it's wide. It's like it's super wide, and so like it can't
So
fit into
he
traditional
was
parking lots and things of that nature. It's just too.
he was a huge fan of the Humvee, what the military uses. And yes, you can buy those today very
Mhm.
easily. They sell them all the time. The retired Humvees, they sell them. But the problem is, the parts are very hard to get, and somebody to work on it because there is a special niche on those.
Right.
Second, this is me again. That's not for everybody. Somebody has probably died in that Humvee and killed in action or something. I could not put myself through that, thinking
Mhm.
that I'm dying. I'm driving with a soldier just died.
Yeah.
That's breaks my heart personally.
Yeah.
But he was a huge fan of Humvee. That's why the Hummer came out. I seen a H1. It's wide. I'm not gonna deny that, Paul.
Yeah.
Not to the point that you couldn't park it. You can park it comfortably. It just
Between two, you would park that between two car, like you got.
oh yeah, you could. It's you have to get used to it. You have the learning curve behind that.
You can't. But how do you even open the door? I mean,
Same
what
with
I'm
open
saying? It's that'd
he
be
had to make it street legal. If it couldn't fit between two doors, it couldn't be street legal. The Humvees in the military are not street legal. They're a lot wider and a lot bigger.
correct.
I haven't seen one in person. I don't remember if I ever seen one in person.
Yeah, as
But
far
from
as
my
one driving one as a public car, yeah, only military. I got a place just down the street from me, in National Guard place, so I've seen them on the roads, but not like a regular street person
yeah.
driving it around. But it's also interesting that I'm sorry, go ahead, finish your point.
So the when he got the idea, he wanted to get this. I think he got the idea from a movie or something, and he was, I guess, sponsor or greenlight. I'm not sure, but that's how the Hummer came about.
Mhm.
I knew people who had the H2, and that was the most popular one. I thought the H1 was a lot better looking, personal opinion. But people were back then in what early 2000 that came out, I believe, Paul. I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah,
gas at the time was a lot cheaper than it is now. It
Oh
was
yeah,
about $100 to fill that gas sucker. Now it probably went closer to over $200 easily.
yeah, for sure. Well, like I
Yeah,
said, we had those spikes. I said when that hurricane hit
couldn't
Louisiana,
get gas
that
station.
was a yeah, that was a big thing. But talk about the old clunky designs again. Oldsmobile. Now again, you have to be Gen X or baby boomer to remember Oldsmobile, and it's even in the name, old. So Oldsmobile was your grandfather's car, your grandmother's car. You didn't have certainly in the 80s and 90s, you didn't have Gen Xers saying, "Oh, I want to buy an Oldsmobile." That was like your grandmother's car. And so again, as that generation started to phase out, again, you had to close the company down because they weren't coming out with anything. I mean, even the way the car looked, it's like, oh, that's grandma's car. And so certainly that was that was a thing. Again, GM also phased out Pontiac. Now Pontiac has some cool cars, obviously the Firebird Trans Am, certainly one of the great muscle cars, especially the 78 one from BJ and the Bandit with the Firebird on the top. Certainly one of my favorite cars of all time. And even obviously you had the Trans Am from Knight Rider, if you guys remember that show. So so again, but again, after a while, like the designs got old.
I
The
give you
only
a better
muscle car that's really
example.
sold today that I see out there that still kind of looks cool, like if you want to own one, is a vet. Corvette.
I disagree with that.
I'm just saying, as far as look wise, I mean, you would if I had not to own a Corvette. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's
I'll pick a
still.
Mustang over that. That's personal preference again, of
I
course.
got you. I
But
got you.
another car that was also discontinued, and people don't realize that, was the Ford Crown Victoria, because
Yeah,
that was the
that was
go-to taxis and go-to
police
cops.
car. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and they discontinued that. It was came in public about 07-ish. Yeah,
Right.
'07, and it was discontinued in 2011 actually because of the gas prices,
Yeah.
and they couldn't do that's not the company's fault, obviously.
Right.
They had to say they had to put a plug on something.
Yeah. Yeah. Just move on to some other different companies. Again, changing trends. Again, who remembers? I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. I mean,
Who didn't?
that was so. You would think that that how can toys kind of go out of business? But again, they filed for bankruptcy. 70 years in business. Filed for bankruptcy in 2017. But again, what brought the company down? Again, poor financial decisions, increased competition from online retailers like Amazon, and a failure to adapt to changing consumer behavior. Like, I don't know about you, but it seems like now, like a lot of kids, I don't see a lot of kids playing with toys like the way we used to.
No,
Like I grew up on puzzle games and I mean like real toys that you kind of mess with. Like I got this guy right here, like this snake puzzle. You kind of take it apart and you would spend hours just kind of playing with this guy. But people don't fancy these type of gadgets anymore. It's like when a kid says what they want for Christmas or whatever, they want like a video game or they want like a cell phone or some other some digital. But like kids don't say, oh, I want a board game for Christmas. I want Monopoly for Christmas. Or what's that game that you play on the floor with the circles and you got a twister.
oh, I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, kids, from what I understand, like they just don't go for that stuff anymore. So again, maybe dolls, maybe. I mean, girls, you might want to still play with dolls, but do uh boys, do they still play? I mean, I guess maybe some WWE action figures or something like that,
Hmm.
but it's not it seems like it's just not as desirable anymore. So again, as far as changing consumer behavior, I don't see the consumers today having a lot of interest or kids in general having an interest in quote unquote toys. Or certainly their attention span is such where they're not going to play with those toys for very long. And I think that was surely one of the things that they couldn't adapt to. But I don't know if any company, for the most part, could adapt to that. It's a lot of inventory. Those stores were massive, and you got to sell a lot of it. And again, if you can get it on Amazon for cheaper, then people are going to take that route also. So again, but I think this is certainly one that for a lot of us, we never thought would go away because what kid doesn't want toys? But kids have changed. But your thoughts on this one?
So what I read online, when Toys R Us went first out of business and heard they were struggling, they did not own the rights to their online web. They sold that long time out to Amazon. I remember clicking
Oh, so
on
it's the same mistake that Borders did. they let
similar.
they let Amazon take their online sales, and eventually people started going to Amazon more so than Toys R Us. So they kind of shot themselves in the foot by that practice because they didn't want to do the investment in the online portion.
Correct. So I remember buying buying something online. Went to Toys R Us, clicked at the website, took me right to Amazon. Right,
Right.
that right here. Did it again, did a couple times, like, okay. Yeah, something's not adding up here.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's why I personally think Amazon went out of business because of, Toys R Us went out of business because they didn't have no online presence.
Mm.
A lot of people, this, Paul. I know how much you do it, but buying games buying things online, even games, easier to get online, shipped to your house. Go to the
Absolutely.
store. Sometimes you don't have the time.
Absolutely.
I don't have
Yeah.
time to go to the stores. I've usually because of weekends.
Yeah.
This weekend I was working. I had no time to do anything this weekend. So I'll be here tomorrow. Sweet. That's it.
Gotcha. And it's interesting here. Eric talks about Sears. Sears is probably like the biggest failure in terms of not embracing the future. Like Sears had the infrastructure. Sears very well could have been Amazon years before. In fact, Sears was the first, from what I understand, Sears was the first retailer to have online shopping. They used to have this Genie program. So when personal computers started to come on, they had this Genie software. And if you also remember, Sears used to have the giant Sears catalog that you would get every year around the holiday time. And they actually had it where with the Genie software, you could go online and place your order. They already had the infrastructure. They, again, shipping, logistics, they had all that stuff down because, again, their catalog business was very successful for decades. I mean, as kids, we look forward to getting that Sears catalog every year and circling all the toys or gadgets or whatever that we wanted just from that catalog. And we would just give it to whether we got anything or not was another story. But, we would spend hours in that Sears catalog just circling or highlighting or bookmarking the pages in there of the stuff that we wanted to get. All kinds of toys, action figures, you name it. And they had it. I mean, all they had to do was really invest at that, would have been a minimal amount of money into developing a real legit, when the internet really came on board. They really should have been the best company to take advantage of that. But they failed to do so. And ultimately it led to their demise. But they had everything was in place. At that time, the head of Amazon, he had nothing. He had a couple in the warehouses, but they had the logistics, they had the infrastructure, supply chain. Everything was there for them to succeed. You're talking about a company that's been in business almost 100 years, but they were slow to the party to embrace it. And by the time they did, it was basically already over. And that's, to me, that's the biggest example of what happens when you don't, again, almost like you're like a luxury liner, right? For a luxury liner to take a U-turn or one of those military aircraft carriers, right? For them to turn around, it takes miles like of circumference for them to turn around. And I think that's the problem with Sears. They were such a legacy brand for so many years. I mean, they gave you lifetime Craftsman tools, lifetime warranties on that stuff. You just didn't think that how could Sears go out of business? But unfortunately, they did. And then you had other entities. Walmart came into play. Target came into play. Started to take some of that business too. And like I said, it was just death by a thousand cuts. But ultimately, it was due to their due to lack of change when they had every opportunity to do so. And like I said, they were the first online retailer, but they didn't take it to the next level, and they got caught, and eventually they got taken out. This one here is personal for me. Full disclosure, I worked for Bed Bath & Beyond in their IT department for almost 20 years, um, up until they closed business in 2023. So I was there when everything went wrong. I was there at their success. They would open up probably every week. They were opening up like a new store. Like they would announce it over the intercom. We just opened up store number 575 in Carton, Nevada. This is our 20th store opening. They were opening up like 50 stores a year. And it would just come over the intercom of their expansion. Massive expansion in the early 2000s probably through the mid 2000s. And then they fell off. And so again, the owners, the original founders of the company, they wanted to make money for themselves. They did an $11.8 billion buyback in 2004 to get its own shares. But the problem was, again, that buyback comes to more than twice the 5.2 billion in debts that they had in its most SEC filing, and they were unable to buy inventory for required sales that they needed and to reverse losses. Now,
Now,
another
this question: as a
yeah.
person who worked for the company, did you know they were struggling that bad? You might lose your job, or what? And like, I'm curious because I know you're the second person I know work for that company.
Mhm.
Like, my editor, Kelly, worked for Blockbuster, and it was kind of like the rug was pulled underneath him, kind of thing. They knew they were
Right,
struggling, but not to that point.
right.
Same thing with Bath and Beyond. He knew they were struggling. The carpet got pulled off on him again.
Right.
So, and I keep joking around, like, dude,
It was
the
it was
train comes
kind of
around
like it was kind of like the Titan. Like I said, for a lot of these companies, it's death by a thousand cuts. There were holes in the ship starting all the way back in 2004,
you. Hmm.
but they were still growing. And like I said, you had this sense that they were growing every year. They got up to over, I think, revenues got almost like to 11 billion in revenue at one point in time in the early 2010s. So they were, the what you saw from the outside was, yeah, the company's growing, it's successful, they're ubiquitous, they got stores all over, um, and everything was fine. But as Anton certainly lists here, competition. Now you had other retailers that went out of business before them. So like Linens and Things used to be a chain out here, and they went out of business. And so again, it's like less, but again, Target was upping its game. If you remember how Target transformed its look, how they transformed their stores, they were
Yeah.
kind of like they all kind of looked the same, but then they kind of reformatted the stores and made them more like showrooms, and they put a lot of investment into making them look cool. But then Walmart was always there, and you're always racing to the bottom in terms of prices there, and you had Amazon growing, so that the competition certainly heated up. That was a factor. The buybacks from the owners, and basically they were just looking to hook up their families and whatnot, not necessarily investing in the long term health and interests of the company. That was a factor. They really amped up their online, but again, by the time they really invested in online, it was like 2017. They were way late to the party. And FYI, if you see Bed Bath and Beyond now, that's not the original Bed Bath and Beyond. What happened when they declared bankruptcy and started selling off assets? They were bought, and I forget the name of the. There was an online retailer that bought the IP, the bedbath.com address. They bought that address for $20 million, and they simply renamed their company Bed Bath and Beyond. And so anything you see now with Bed Bath & Beyond in terms of the profits and if they're doing well and whatnot, that's not the original company. That was a rebranding of the company, and I'm still trying to remember the guys who brought them out. Oh, Al, it'll come to me in a second, but yeah, they basically took over, and that was it. But yeah, there were just a lot of things that were that again doomed the company. But it was like the Titanic, because remember when the Titanic got hit, a lot of people didn't even know that the boat was in trouble. It was like several hours before people were like, okay, we need to get out of we need to get out of this we need to get out of this boat. But it wasn't like a big, like initially it was like a bump. I think for most passengers, they thought it was just a bump or whatever. And but again, slowly but surely, and um as the boat filled up, it was Overstock. That was the company I was looking for. Overstock.com bought the Bed Bath and Beyond IP. And so when you see Bed Bath Beyond, that it's basically Overstock. Shout out to certainly Braxton and Steak Fiend, certainly in the house tonight. Appreciate you being here, and our certainly one of our faves, Catelia, in the building tonight. Appreciate you being here as well. But certainly the Bed Bath Beyond, that was like I said, you're gonna have schools. In fact, I think there are some schools that are looking at why Bed Bath Beyond failed. It's like it's classroom material right now in terms of a study in a company that was prevalent since 1971. So again, these two guys opened it up in 1971. The company is basically in business over 50 years, and it just went sideways. And they went through a series of different CEOs coming in to try to rebrand the company. But again, and then once COVID hit, and that's the thing too, I think a lot of companies were impacted. So again, they were already in a weakened state prior to COVID. COVID might have like took them out. That was like the death knell, and they never could really get back from that. The other thing that they also tried to do, and this is something I said earlier about companies that you have to maintain your brand quality with existing customers. Now, Bed Bath, they specialize. They had a lot of high end brands like in cookware, like Califon, and some of those high end brands, Cuisinart. All those brands were sold there, where you might not find those brands in like a Walmart or a Target. Bed Bath Beyond was known for that, but what they tried to do was to try to make some quick money. They started to try to sell their own brands. It's like, when you go to like Walmart or something, you see some generic, what's Walmart's generic brand? I forget the name of it,
Sound
but
Club?
what's that?
Sound Club, I think.
Yeah, I'm just saying, own brands, meaning the generic, like you can buy like Libby vegetables, or you can buy the ones that got the generic store bought
I
brand
think
on
it's,
there.
it's called Sound Club. Like I
Good,
said,
no, good value, good value, good value. I'm saying on the can itself, like any company's generic brand, I think with Walmart it's called Good Value. Basically, what they try to do is they try to sell their own good value products. So when it came to towels and linens and sheets and cookware sets and whatnot, it just had Bed Bath Beyond's label on it, but it was cheap and people didn't go for it. It's like, wait a minute, I came here for Cuisinart. I came here for the high end. Bed Bath was also they had a major bridal section where people came. It's like, if you really want to get the bride and groom a good gift, set up your bridal registry at Bed Bath Beyond and put the high end stuff on there, the crystal and the china sets and things of that nature, the Linux china sets. People went there for that product. But then when they went, it's like, well, where's the product? And you trying to sell us this cheap stuff, great value. Yeah, thank you, Kateya. Um, People were, it's like, look, you're turning off. I mean, you had a niche. And that's also important because think about it. Even with COVID, the companies that are still in business, a lot of these high end luxury brands are still in business. Porsche, Lexus, BMW,
Gucci.
yeah, Gucci, the watches, like just the high end stuff is still there. I mean, one, because rich always people are going to have money, but again, because it's a brand, it's known for something. You know what I'm saying? So again, they're not going to suffer a lot of those things because they didn't, even when things are going bad, they didn't downgrade their products at the expense of their customer base. They were very loyal to their customer base. And I think that's something that I think Bed Bath, when they were like, oh, let's make some cheap money, they were like, okay, let's go in this direction, but the people rejected it. And then once the supply chain issues started to happen, they couldn't buy inventory from Cuisinart or from Linux or from Waterford, or all these kind of high end companies, and it became a problem. You know what I'm saying? So again, Sport Authority and Models, but again, a lot of stuff was cheap. You didn't go to, if I was as a trainer, if I was going to buy fitness equipment, I would not buy from Sport Authority nor Models. That was sort of low end. And again, a lot of those low end retailers, they went to Dick's that was a bit more upscale, a little bit more high end. And they were able to maintain in that crowded market with all those different
Honestly,
stores.
Paul, I didn't know Models went out of business.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a few years ago. But I used to, like I said, if I wanted certain things, like sweatshirts or athletic equipment, or even like a cheap, like I'm not a guy. I'm not going to pay $200 for a pair of shoes. I'm just not. So yeah, if I just wanted something just to be practical, $50 or whatever. Yeah, you can go there, get boots, apparel. They had all kind. It was almost like a sporting goods store in the sense of like clothing, fish tackle, and sporting equipment, and things of that nature. But it wasn't, like I said, a lot of that stuff wasn't high end. And so certainly, they had a niche, but again, in a crowded market, and especially now, you can get stuff on Amazon. They had to go, they had to go that way, and like I said, it didn't work out for them. But then, but this guy here, I'm just gonna put a plug in. This guy here, he does a pretty good job of summarizing what happens to companies. So like the basically telling the rise and fall of how companies have kind of come. They were very successful. Names, certainly that become very ubiquitous. So I just put his link in the chat, but I find his videos very enjoyable, and he really kind of goes and breaks down what happened. A lot of it was business decisions, a lot of it was arrogance, a lot of it was spreading yourself too thin. And so he goes in and talks about these entities and fan reviews. Like the one that fascinated me recently that I watched was the one on not the NASCAR, the rise and fall of NASCAR. At one point, NASCAR was the second most popular sport in America. They were an early partner with ESPN that helped grow the brand nationally. Because again, NASCAR was basically a Southeast regional sport. It's a Southern sport, but with ESPN, they were able to grow it nationally. And you also had the influx of new stars, right? Like Jeff Gordon and these younger. Back then, it was like Richard Petty, a lot of the skull dipping Southern good old boy type of Dale Earnhardt, rest in peace to him. But um you had a lot of that deep Southern roots kind of thing. You would go to a NASCAR race, they had Confederate flags all over the place. It definitely let you know you were in the South. But then once the sport started expanding to California and to Michigan and to all parts of the country, Dover, Delaware, different Poconos, all these different parts of the country, um, you know, things started to change. And in the wake of certainly what happened with Black Lives Matter, the that George Floyd, and people were like, look, we're changing the dynamic. They were saying, okay, you can't bring a Confederate flag to a NASCAR race. Now, whether you want to call that cancel culture or not, in fact, we got an upcoming show. We'll talk about cancel culture, and I may go back to that example to show you, what happened in that situation. But NASCAR had some decisions to make in terms of like, are we going to try to broaden our base? But how do we broaden our base of appeal without turning people off? Yeah, for certain people, seeing the Confederate flag in 2026, yeah, that's a problem. But for other people, it's like, look, this is our culture and whatnot, and we just want to be us. But so again, Michael Girdley, he talks about several companies, and each summary that I've seen, most of his videos are like 20 minutes or less, and he really does a great job. So it's a very entertaining channel, and certainly I recommend if you want to kind of get summaries on those things, you can certainly go there and check those out. But again, even in other spaces, we talk about Sears. Yeah, again, catalog business, they were in the perfect position to take advantage of. They should have been Amazon. Amazon was started in '94. They had everything in place to do Amazon, but they failed to do so. And then Yahoo, again, refused to buy Google twice. Tried to buy Facebook and rejected an offer to be acquired by Microsoft for $44 billion. In 2016, they brought Verizon brought Yahoo for 4.8. So they basically got sold for 10 times less than what they should have been bought at, because I guess they were looking for a sweeter deal. And then Zanton saying here, yes, all these younger drivers definitely, again, none of these guys were from the deep south. A lot of these guys from California and other parts of the country, and it was just a new face of NASCAR. Some fans accepted it, some rejected it. You got other companies like, again, Peloton was the big thing. Everyone's spending $2,000 for these Peloton bikes, and some people didn't. Certainly when again COVID hit and again money became an issue, nobody wanted to start paying $2,000 for bikes anymore. And so they fell off the scales. And then they have some where it's death by, again, the person out the CEO. Now, CrossFit, I was never a fan of CrossFit as a physical trainer. I think there's a lot of injuries involved with CrossFit. I mean, I would go to my sports orthopedic, and his whole office is full of guys doing CrossFit stuff because it's very explosive. It's very dangerous. If you see how these guys do chin-ups and whatnot, it's not executed properly. But then the CEO had some stuff to say that got him in trouble with a lot of people. So again, another example of cancel culture. After the deleting of George Floyd, he had some things to say about it, and there was a lot of pushback from that, and he lost a lot of sponsors and whatnot because of it. Now, apparently, CrossFit has a new CEO that just came on board earlier this month. We'll see if he can turn the company around. But sometimes the CEOs of these companies, again, we talked about this, and we'll talk about this more in the cancel culture show. A lot of times, these guys start to think of themselves bigger than the business. And so one of the rules that I've always heard in business is don't mess the bag up. And so when you decide to be outspoken in certain areas, do understand not everyone's going to like it. And when you go too far with your opinions, regardless of where you go, you're going to offend somebody. And you have to ask yourself, is what you're saying, is that worth hurting your company over your comments? Or are you going to double down on it? So again, these are things that, again, people have to keep in mind. I got a couple more here. And again, I think we actually talked about this. So again, Kodak and Polaroid. Kodak, the city of Rochester, New York, was essentially built by Kodak. Kodak was like Rochester was essentially what they used to call a company town. They literally built a city to support all the workers, where they had in the tens of thousands of employees working at Kodak. They built a whole city around it. But when Kodak failed to see the digital space coming, they went out of business. And if you last time I was in Rochester, might have been about 10, 12 years ago. And it's like a ghost town. It's like, I mean, you can tell it's like it's becoming decrepit because the major employer in the city, which was Kodak, when they went, a lot of people either moved or left or what have you, but it wasn't the same. Same thing with Polaroid. I mean, growing up, if you're Gen X, remember the point and shoot Polaroid? The photo came out, 60 seconds, boom, there's your photo. Again, slow to embrace the digital revolution. Now, again, there's still some hardcore photographer fans, like, people who, they still got the development rooms in their basement or something like that. They still hang photos by clothes hangers. So, I mean, it's a pastime. It's a hobby. But it's not going to sustain a business long term, especially when you're talking about, when Kodak and Polaroid were the face of camera, certainly in the 70s. But then in the early 80s, you started getting some imports from Japan. You had Canon, Minolta, and all these other camera companies were starting to come out. The competition became fierce, and then digital photography again also changed things. Again, very slow to adapt. Now, another company we've talked about on the Hangout is again the death of Xbox. So again, you had when PlayStation, I think Xbox came out. What was out? PlayStation 3 or 2 when Xbox dropped.
During PS2 era, but Xbox still in business, Paul. They have not.
They're still, but they got a major drop off. They almost went out of business. They almost dropped the platform in part because they went away from gaming. They brought in the CEO, and he was like, he wanted to change Xbox instead of just a video game system. He wanted it to be an entertainment system. So it was like
Yeah, that
streaming
was
and
with the Xbox.
movies.
Yeah, I remember that. That wasn't the 360. That was the Xbox One actually during the
Right.
PS3 in that era. So they're actually announced recently they will not in a couple of years they are not going to be making consoles anymore. They lose money every time a console goes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody knows that the money's in the games, definitely digital games, because they don't have to worry about printing them on a disc.
Right. Right.
So
And like I said,
Xbox announced
right.
it
And
in
said
the next couple
Sony
of
had the
years.
same has the same issue, but they never got off of their game. They never got off of
Correct.
what made them work. Xbox tried to get exotic
Yeah.
and get off of gaming, and once they did that, they never recovered. I'm not saying they don't sell hundreds of thousands of consoles a year. I'm not
No, I'm
saying
not
they're
saying
not
I'm
making.
agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you because I
Yeah.
can't stand Xbox. But what I'm saying to you is, in the next few years, you're not going to see an Xbox in the market, and they're going. Maybe they're going to push out one more console if we're lucky. I think they are, but that's it. They just released a handheld, but they teamed up with Steam Deck with that one. So what they're going to be doing, they're just going to make it like Sega when they did the whole when Saturn came out, or what was it? Not Saturn. Man, I can't remember the system that came out during the PS2 era. Also was
Mhm.
X 360.
Not the Master System, right?
Oh,
Sega
man,
Master System, I think, was a few years earlier. I think that was
no, it was a different time. So they failed miserably,
mhm.
and now they only make games. They almost went out of business.
Yeah.
Dreamcast. Thank you, Anton. It was called Dreamcast. So they're probably going at the same route
Mhm.
because a lot of people cannot keep up with PlayStation because they have a very, very good exclusives.
Mhm.
Xbox, you don't really have any exclusives. To
Yeah.
be honest with you, there's no reason to go out and buy their system. It goes back to the same thing. They're not changing with the times. Exclusives where it is. If you put money into your studios who are making your games, you're going to get back. PlayStation had it for the longest time,
Right.
and recently just went on Xbox, I believe, or the Steam Deck. I can't remember. I think it's Steam Deck. The Spider-Man game. That was the biggest hit. They didn't only make one, they didn't make two, they make three so far, and a fourth one's coming out. That's
Mhm.
a successful game right there. A
Yeah.
series.
Yeah.
So same thing with Xbox. They're not going to adapt because
Right.
the numbers are not there for them.
Yeah. For sure. Obviously, BlackBerry, obviously, before smartphones really, started to come out. I mean, that was the device, especially if you were in business. And it's interesting. I took your advice. I bought from that company that has the BlackBerry type of keyboard. You can attach it to your phone. I
Oh,
put my
it's called, yeah.
Yeah, I put my order in, so I'm waiting. I should be getting it shortly because I think they sold their first batch. Now they have their second batch coming out, so hopefully I'll be getting mine within the next month or
Yeah, the
so.
second generation came out recently.
Yeah, yeah. So I actually bought
So,
one. Yeah.
so BlackBerry has a funny story. I don't know if you know the story with BlackBerry.
Mhm.
When the iPhone came out, I believe it was like between $400 to $500, and that was very high for that time. The CEO of BlackBerry laughed on camera, and like he was laughing at him. But look who had the final laugh. But BlackBerry has not really gone completely out of business. They have stopped making smartphones, and they only do. I have an article over here. Software and cybersecurity stuff they're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a rumor every so often they say BlackBerry's coming back. BlackBerry's coming back. I have never seen anything like that.
Yeah. Or they just pivoted because we've also seen companies like that, like IBM. I didn't know IBM started out as a meat slicing machine company. Like I never knew that. Meat slicing machines. And then they changed
Fuck out of
again
here.
once. Yeah. once they, I mean, again, the company goes back. I mean, I mean, like 100 years. You know what I'm saying? But they got into business machines and office machines and typewriters. And once the computer revolution came on, they got into that. Then they got into laptops. So again, if you were in the business, like the IBM, the ThinkPad, that was like the business laptop. You know, it was durable. You could drop it down the stairs. It would still work or whatnot. But then they sold that business off. But now they're more a software solutions company now than a hardware company. But IBM, again, they were able to go through several iterations and changes and still stay relevant. You may not see them sold in the stores anymore, but again, they're still a viable company because of their innovation. And so again, it's like when you fail to innovate, you can become one of those companies from back in the day. And sort of the last slide I'll show again, all these fast food chains that are out of business. You know, Boston Market and Fridays and even Subway is not doing as well. They're going at Arby's.
I was surprised they're still in business.
Yeah, Applebee's. I mean, a lot of these companies are struggling right now. When they first came out, they were like the big thing, but a lot of people don't really go to them that like that anymore. And so, you being working in the restaurant and the food business, why do
Mhm.
you think a lot of these franchise models fail? Is it the quality of the food that changes over time, or what? Why do you think a
Usually,
lot of
it's,
these businesses
most
don't do as
times
well as they used to?
is high overhead. That's what usually kills a business.
Mm,
Very high overhead because your whole food product has to be the minimum 30%, nothing over 30%. You're not gonna make money after over 30%. Your
mhm,
lost profit should be at 30% with your loss of your food. So because let's say you bought a case of burgers for let's say $50, argument's sakes, all right?
mhm.
Um, and you sell it for $8.99. Do the
Mm,
math. Are you making that money back?
right.
People
No.
don't do the math. And there's a lot of them out there like that. They don't pivot or change, talk to their providers. Like Cisco is one of the number one food provider in the market right now. They it's the price and they deal with it. But except I pick up the phone and talk to your representative. Listen, I need a better deal, or I'm going to somewhere else. And there are other companies. I'm not saying they're not. The
Yeah.
U.S. Cisco is the number one, but the U.S. Food is another one.
Mm,
Pocono Produce is global now. Like they next to go all over the United States. So they started in my area, Pocono. Now they're bloomed out. So do the math. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
But I do want to mention too on really fast, like what we were saying before. Um, Sony and Nintendo pivot what their version started. Do you know how Sony started?
No, no.
They started as a small radio repair shop during the whole I believe World War II or World War One. I can't remember
Yeah,
what it
that
was.
makes sense.
I think it was World War Two. Nintendo
Right.
was similar actually. Nintendo started as a small local handmade craft card game store, and they
Mhm.
pivot over the years.
Right.
In I have my notes right here. And in 1960, they pivot
Yeah.
to what we know now.
But even then, you mentioned Sony. That's another company that now again in the 80s. And again, for you guys who are Gen S, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. The top quality set, hands down, was Sony. They were the most expensive, but as far as they were like top tier quality through the 80s and in the 90s, they were number one. Picture quality, everything. But then you had LG came on board, and I forget the other one that also competes with LG.
TCL.
Well, TCL certainly. I mean, they're like a budget brand, but they're certainly relevant. But LG, and what's the other one?
Panasonic.
Panasonic, right? They're up there as well. So again, they got overtaken at some point in time. But like a Sony back in the 80s would cost like twice as much as like another company that's not in business anymore, a Magnavox or Zenith.
Well,
Okay.
but Paul, in their defense, they're still doing that. Have you seen the Sony price TVs right now?
No, but I'm saying,
I
but they're not the go-to. Like if you want it like high end, you can do a lot better going to other brands than Sony. They're not they used to be the gold standard. and I just don't
Can't
remember
sway
them
that,
being the
bro.
gold standard anymore.
I think like between Samsung and Sony,
Samsung, that was the one I was talking about. It wasn't Panasonic. It was Samsung and LG TVs. I think always outsell. When I've never seen, I go to any big store now, go to Costco or whatever. They're not. No one's selling. Who's selling Sony TVs?
there's a lot of places who sell Sony TV still.
I don't see them. I
Yeah.
go to PC
But they don't
Richard. I
buy,
go
so
to
they're so expensive. That's what it is. My 85-inch TVs, I was looking at three kinds. I was looking at a Samsung, I was looking at a Sony, and I was looking at what is that? I can't remember the name of it. You just said it before too. LTC or whatever it's called, right?
oh yeah,
Oh,
HCL or
yeah, whatever. They
yeah,
they make really good TVs still to this day.
right.
They're more budget friendly versus Samsung and Sony.
But I'm saying, but the quality has increased greatly to the point where, again, do I really need for a TV? And keep in mind, TVs don't last as long as they use. Like again, back in the day, you buy a TV, it lasted 20 years. People aren't doing that anymore. So, is it really worth it to pay 2 or 3 times? Is the picture quality in terms of what the human eye can really perceive, unless you're one of those video files that demands the best quality? Is it worth paying twice as much for a TV set than usual? Like I said, I
Actually,
haven't. Guys in the chat, have you seen? When's the last time you saw a Sony? Maybe if you go to a Best Buy, you may see a Sony TV set. But if you go to like your big bug stores, a Walmart, a Costco, a Sam's Club, most of those guys are selling LGs, Panasonics, Samsungs. I don't see Sony sold anymore like that. So if they are,
brand
then
I
they
was
might be
talking
in
about
some other.
before,
What's that?
the brand I was talking about was LG. Actually, can share this runner up. That's what it was.
Right.
So
But I'm saying, but people are going there versus going
yeah, no,
after
I'm not
Sony.
disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
But what I'm arguing is they'll sell Sony's. My Best Buy, my Walmart, my Target has them. They don't really
Right.
sell as much, and
They're not in the showrooms. They're
No,
not
they're
like
in the
on the
showroom.
display. I haven't seen
I
one.
seen them. Like when I was buying, I bought mine from Best Buy. When I was comparing those three of them,
You went into the Magnolia section or no?
the what?
Magnolia in Best Buy. That's where the high end equipment. They have that like go into a Best Buy. You go into the Magnolia section. That's where they got all the high
We
end.
don't have, yeah, we
for
don't have
home.
that at my Best Buy. There were just
Okay.
old TVs hanging on the wall. And the guy
Gotcha.
goes, listen, I'll be honest with you, like if the LG are really good quality for a good price.
Yeah.
But he goes, because I was really pushing to the Samsung, like check out the Sony. He goes, it is more expensive, but you could have seen literally naked eye quality to quality is night and day. With the Samsung versus the LG, you really couldn't tell with a naked eye. And I went with Samsung because I had a Samsung, multiple of them, and they survive a long period of time, usually for me. I never had a problem with them.
Yeah, for sure. Here's another brand that you would think, and for those of you in the chat, those who came late, we asked at the beginning of the show, name a brand of anything that you thought would never go out of business. Like that was so ubiquitous. That was so, it's like no way. Or at least if they didn't go out of business, they're no longer as relevant in the marketplace as they used to. So again, some companies that were named earlier, Sears, for example, again, growing up, nobody thought Sears was going to go out of business. Nobody. It was like, it was almost impossible. They would but again, a lot of these companies, these legacy companies, they're like the Titanic. There was, I guess, the famous line from the captain of the Titanic: "Nobody could sink this ship." I think he said that at the beginning of the movie or whatever, or apparently he's quoted in saying that. But yeah, but
the ship is unsinkable.
Yeah, but then obviously we know with the rest of the story. But I'm just saying, but there's some companies where some people will say that this company is unsinkable. Now here's another one that I didn't understand this until recently. But before I do this, certainly I want to acknowledge again, Lunatic Librarian. Again, thanks for being part certainly of the chat. Thank you for being respectful in the chat. Certainly always appreciate your insights and whatnot. Dropped a $1.99 central super chat. All centralized systems have failed. And then he has another one here. Again, planned obsolescence makes all brands junk. Again, appreciate your perspective there. But here's one that I didn't think, and I was really surprised, and I had to think to myself, um, Intel. I mean, there are a lot of the chips in phones and smartphones are not Intel chips. You have AMD that's really taken over, even in the gaming consoles. Like I said, the PlayStations and the Xboxes. I don't think no one's using Intel. I think AMD, which used to be a budget chip, has certainly changed things. Nvidia, they've also stepped up in terms of their quality, but you would used to buy an AMD as like a budget chip. It was like half the cost of the CPU as an Intel chip. And Intel has kind of fallen off in terms of its dominance in the 80s when personal computers came on, when Gateway Computer, Dell Computer, it was Intel and it was nobody else until, like I said, you got to the 90s and early 2000s. AMD came on board. I forget, if there was another chip maker at the time, but again, there was like, they were made for budget PCs. You had Apple; they went through a few iterations. They were running Intel chips for a while. Well, first of all, Apple started out with the MC 68,000 chip. It was their own chip that they developed for their Macs. Then there was a period of time, I think, when Steve Jobs left, that they went to Intel chips, and then in recent years, they went back to their own M chips, M1, M2, M3 chips.
Yeah, back when iPhone 12 came out, they started doing that, and it was a very powerful chips. Not the most powerful chip now in the market is the Snapdragon 8 Elite, and it's
Snapdragon, that's another one. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's made
So,
from a company I have never heard of them, to be honest with you. And
mhm.
I use that chip all daily because it's in my phone. I have a
Right.
Snap. I
So
could run
I
5
think
on a
they
Snapdragon.
really missed the boat because I don't recall Intel ever really being a serious player in the cell phone market. Snapdragon is certainly was one of the one of the big ones. The iPhone they had there, going on for a while, but they never really capitalized. They had all that market share through the 80s, the 90s, and early 2000s. They
Mhm.
were basically the chip. They were like the top, and either they stopped innovating or whatever happened. Back early in the 80s, Sun Microsystems, that was a very powerful RISC processor at the time that was used in a lot of universities and whatnot. They were certainly, again, ahead of their time. They fell off. And so yeah, so all of these so that's for me, that's like the biggest one. Like I never thought that Intel would fall off the way they fell off. And I was shocked when I heard when they fell off. Could tell you mentions Texas Instruments, TI. Yeah, so I remember them mostly from not so much. I know they did some computer stuff, but I remember mostly like their calculators. But again, that's another thing. Who buys a calculator today unless you're like a medical student or something where they want these scientific calculators for certain mathematical courses or science or medical courses or whatnot. But again, who buys a It's in every device. It's in your cell phone. It's on your computer. But people used to buy calculators with buttons. And then the coolest thing back in the day, I don't know if you remember, Pete, they used to have the watches
I remember them.
that had the calculator on the watch, and you didn't use it for anything major or whatever. In fact, if you're going to take a test in school or whatever, the teacher would make you take it off because you can't use a calculator in class. Certainly not for the test anyway. But that was again, we
I
thought that was the
actually
cool.
knew a student in Greece, one of my fellows, he was a classmate of mine. The teacher didn't know there was because that hasn't come to Greece yet.
Mhm.
So, and she one day realized, like, it was like halfway through the year, he was doing it, and he got in a lot of trouble for it because they didn't. That was so new, so nobody knew what it was. It hasn't hit the Greek market. Oh man, he got his ass chewed off of that one. I can't. I remember that like it was nothing.
Yeah, yeah. Other companies, Burger King, just getting back into the food area, whatnot. Again, they've been struggling. Certainly as of late, I think the original company was about out years ago, but they're trying to, I guess, um, turn around. It says to combat the slump, RBI, which is I guess the owner, Restaurant Brands International that owns them, initiated a $700 million promotional ad to reclaim the flame plan dedicated to upgrading restaurant technology, remodeling stores, and heavily funding advertising. While the brand has seen some positive sales momentum, it continues to navigate a highly competitive and strained fast food market. So again, you have they're trying to stay relevant in the industry, and I guess companies are trying to invest in. But again, I think now there's so many burger places. Now we talked about like Habit Burger, and what's the other high end brand? I talked about that I think last week on one of your
Oh, Shake Shack.
Shake Shack, and people want these different concoctions now. The Flame Broil Whopper. Once again, if you're a kid of the '80s, you kind of grew up with that, and it was like Burger King versus McDonald's.
Mhm.
Wendy's was always like a distant third, and then so you had those burger wars. And for those of you in this area, you had White Castle, the little square hamburgers, White Castle. Now, if you're if you're in the South, there's another chain which I forget. That is kind of like the White Castle of the South. For those of you in those areas, you can help me out there. Crystal, yeah, Crystal Burgers, which is basically the only difference between Crystal and White Castle. White Castle hamburgers have ketchup on them. Crystal has mustard on them. Other than that, they're the same burger,
I have never heard of Crystal.
same process. It's a Southern thing.
Is it really?
Maybe you might find one in Delaware somewhere or something like that, or maybe Western PA. But it's definitely a Southern thing. I was like, "What is this?" And I went in. It's like, "Oh, this is White Castle." So definitely it is one of those again
Like, I
regional.
know the biggest trend in the like South Carolina, or not Carolina, or what is that called? Like Hollywood area, is In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah,
Like that's a huge trend down there. And I had CQ actually when he was in Cali, and he goes, he tried one. He goes, he wasn't impressed. It's just another burger.
yeah,
And same
yeah,
thing. The new trend right now is smash burgers.
yeah,
It's no special trend with them. There's just a burger.
yeah. Now, Eric and I, we remember there was a spot called Fuddruckers. Again, back in the '90s, great store. You went in, you ordered your burger. So it was like they made the burger and they came in third pound and half pound sizes. So these were like massive at the time burgers. You would get your burger and then they had like a fixings bar, and you would go over there and put as many fixings or toppings on there as you wanted to. And so that was that was so that was the thing. Now lunatic, this is scary. Pizza Hut now made with real cheese. And I think I remember, I think even Domino's, I think they were doing that for a while also. So the question I'm going to ask was, if you're going to put that now on your boxes, now made with real cheese, what were you making with before? And was that healthy for us back in the day?
I think it's a promotion thing. To be honest with you, I think it wasn't like
I
a
don't, but
they don't
that's still a scary. Like I would be raised. I'd be going to my doctor and be like, what have I been eating if it wasn't real cheese for some time? Am I okay? So again, that's a very risky ad, because again, it's like you're offending people who may have been patronizing your product for a long period of time. So again, I'm like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. When it comes to again, the marketing of your product, but certainly again, for folks still in the chat, if you got some other brands, if you want to mention as we start to put the landing gear down on this show. But again, I thought this is just interesting to see that again, nothing is necessarily safe and secure, right? That again, even these companies that are operating in the billions of dollars, if they fail to innovate, if they fail to keep up with the trends, if they don't take the pulse of the consumer base, and like I said, there's all other type of companies, Top Golf. If you ever been to like a Top Golf range or whatever, again, it's a cool night. If you don't want to go to a golf course, you get there, you get some wings, you hang out with a party, and you and have some fun with your friends on a given night or whatever. It's fun. but they're struggling right now, in terms of a in terms of a business. So from can tell you, Pizza Hut's cheese is supplied by Leprino Foods, which uses a word that I will not pronounce, but it sounds very chemical, a silicone-based industrial chemical in its manufacturing process. Wow. So you got to ask yourself. I mean, it's like what are you putting in your food again? Lunatic librarian. The modern fast food product is not real food, and maybe that's why people are trying to go to some of these more posh burger places like the Shake Shacks or whatever. Maybe thinking that paying nearly $20 for a hamburger, that you're getting a better quality of food.
Hmm.
And then some people you might have to think, you know what, you might be just better
As a
off.
chef, I have seen a lot of nasty things in my career. All right.
Mhm.
So I love when I hear, "Oh, burgers are made fresh." Wendy's. Remember when Wendy's used to say that?
Fresh. Where's the
Guess what?
beef?
Let me. Only time you see anything meat fresh coming in, if you have a butcher on site or you have a local meat shop deliver it. They were
Mhm.
never fresh. They were
Right.
always frozen.
Right.
Five Guys, the same thing. They bring it frozen. They just defrost it and then just pound, roll it in balls and crush it. That's all they do.
Mhm.
It's nothing special about them. And I'll be honest with you, I would stay away from Five Guys because the way they clean the grill is so disgusting. It's not even funny. They
Mhm.
don't even clean the grill. They just they wash it out with water and that's it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I admit that. Yeah, I cook a lot at home. I cook tonight, but I do like that. I mean, so my wife and I, we have our date nights. We like to go to restaurants, especially when we travel on vacation and stuff. So we'll still every once in a while. Like I don't do. I think I had a couple weeks ago. I had McDonald's for the first time in months, and but yeah, I don't do it often. But again, I'm not so fearful of it to say like, oh my gosh, Jimmy. If I'm eating it, like, and I worked at McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's for 4 years straight. I had McDonald's every day from age 16 to 20.
you got sick
Every
of it,
day
probably.
I ate McDonald's and didn't gain a pound. By the way,
I
I was
hate.
so skinny. My metabolism was so fast back then. I was so skinny. I looked like JJ Jimmy Walker from Good Times. And so I never gained a pound eating. I would have like 6 or 7 nuggets a day. And, when you leave, and I used to close. So we would get like all the burgers from the night that you would throw out. Don't tell anybody about it. We take some of that stuff home. It's like I'm not throwing
Oh,
this.
dude, I used to work for what's it called it Burger King and Five Guys. They do the same thing. All of them do it.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to, but they do it
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
like my manager goes, "It's going to go garbage sandwich. Just take it." So I prefer you eat it than not throw it away.
Yeah. Shout out to again lunatic. Yeah, Amish people. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want some good food, maybe I don't know how good it is for you, but certainly Amish markets. I mean, yeah, you'll develop a food coma over there. I mean, it's like the
So
baked
the thing
goods and whatnot. It's yeah.
with Amish meats, milks, and everything, they're not produced correctly like we do right now. Meaning,
Hmm.
because we're so used to all these chemicals in our food, the cattle get all these shots and everything. They don't give them shots, nothing. It can actually make you sicker getting meats and milk and everything from the Amish because your stomach's not used to not having, like taking dog to the vet. Same concept, the
Yeah.
cows, and
Yeah.
they don't give them vaccines, anything like that.
Hmm.
So a lot of people their stomachs cannot handle it. Definitely the milk. The milk is not processed correctly like we do.
It's
It
not
goes through
pasteurized,
all.
homogenized. I guess.
Thank you. Exactly where I was trying to. I was
Yeah.
looking for. Like even meats, they get processed. Same thing with the eggs. None of that does that. They just
Hmm.
they butcher it, they wrap it, and they eat it.
Hmm.
They smoke arena because they don't have fridge usually because they don't have electric.
Yeah. True.
But if you bought something fresh butchered from an Amish, 9 out of 10 you're going to get sick
Hmm.
because your body's
Well,
not.
so is it more so like I guess you got to build like a resistance, I guess. I mean, or like
Some
them, the
yes,
Amish
some
people,
no.
they're kind of used to it, so it's not
Yes,
it's not yeah.
like I'll use Greece for a good example. They are less of using hormones to grow the cattle to grow naturally. That is not going to bother you, but the animals still need to get their shots
Mhm.
because it's like us. We get our shots normally.
Mhm.
There's a whole different
Someday.
argument if you want to believe it or not.
I
That's we're
got
not
you.
getting into that
I
politics.
got you. I got you. Yeah.
But let's say you get the shot, like Apollo gets his shots.
Mhm.
Doctor Strange gets his shot. Same thing with the cattle. They have to get their shots though,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
that's why crazy cow came out and all this diseases.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. There was one more chain that I want to mention that, again, very popular in the 80s, certainly into the 90s, up until the pandemic. And that was Chuck E. Cheese. In fact, the guy, Michael, he done a episode on Chuck E. Cheese, again, the rise and fall of Chuck E. Cheese. And that was a
Are they
time
still around?
when, not to the extent they are, but
Okay.
certainly they've closed a lot of stores. But again, that was one of the biggest blows to their store was COVID. Think about it. Back then,
Yeah.
you had the big playpens, and all these kids are running around. They're jumping into the bin with all the balls in it and stuff. And parents, I guess, back then weren't as worried about communicable diseases and things of that nature. People kind of took for granted that your kids were mostly immunized and healthy and whatnot. That I'm not going to put my kids into a petri dish playing at Chuck E. Cheese. You know what I'm saying? But then when COVID happened and when people got a lot more germ phobic, a lot of that stuff shut down because, again, you don't want kids playing around in these bins. You don't know where these kids have been or whatnot, or so people are a lot more phobic about having these common communal areas where a lot of kids are playing all on the same games or the same equipment or what have you. So again, that was certainly one of the things that, again, the pandemic changed a lot of our behaviors when it came to how we interact with one another. And I think a lot of businesses are still trying to get that back, get that business back. But we'll see. It may still take a few years before people feel comfortable because you still have people walking around with masks now. I mean, either, for one reason or another, it's almost weird now that I'm still like, why are you still wearing a mask? But there's still
Not as
people
many
who,
people do it. Is rare when people do it now. It's like out of 10 people, 1% does it. But you still do have it. I That's the question, the catch 22, unfortunately. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying?
yeah.
My mother still wears it because obviously she has cancer. She needs to be more protected than we do.
Yeah, if your immune system is compromised. Now, again, whether the mask works for you or not, that's another story as well. Because stuff came out later, in terms of how much does the mask actually help you in terms of fighting that off. So that's another controversy as well. Lunatic did have a pushback on the Amish. Says said maybe 6 or 7 heads on the Amish farm versus 67,000 in a commercial cattle operation, but obviously, again, you work in the business, you work in the food business.
When you get
Uh,
a 20 years
yeah,
experience, then we're gonna have that conversation. That's all I gotta say.
yeah. So
I've
yeah,
been in the business
so I
for
think
20
Lunatic
years.
he gets
I know
his meat from a butcher or something like that as well. But
that's
but
different
again,
there.
everyone shares.
They still get this there. That means they still get the shots if you get it from a butcher by federal law. And a keyword, federal law. You have to get their vaccines, not steroids. Vaccines. You cannot sell it. They were caught selling milk, the Amish. They went to prison for 10 years. When you're
Mm,
in the business, we can have that conversation.
mm. Very interesting. Very interesting. All right. Well, I think we can certainly put a mark on a stamp on this show. Again, certainly going to the site that I had put in the chat. Again, the guy has very interesting comment. He's very pithy, and he actually gives you summary. So if you want to go back and like kind of read up on some of the points that he's making, again, Michael Gertley on his YouTube channel. Again, I enjoy his content very much, and I think you'll certainly get a lot of it as well. I think he does a good job of telling the story. And again, if he gets it wrong or something or whatever, people will check him in the chats. But I think he gets the general strokes right when it comes to why these businesses who were riding high at a point. And we like you being here too. Appreciate you. Nothing but respect for you, Lunatic, for being here. But certainly but I think as we see these companies, I mean, that it's a message for us. If a $1 billion company doesn't pivot and change, that they can find themselves on the outside looking in, that also speaks for us as well. That we cannot stand as people, we cannot stand still with technology changing and whatnot. again, your success in the future is going to be based on your ability to adapt, to embrace new things. And if you don't, then you like these companies being left in the dust, you could be certainly left in the dust as well. So I think it's just a reminder to all of us that don't run away from change, take risks, well educated risks to stay ahead of the game, invest in yourself to get better, maybe acquire a new skill set that you didn't have before so you can stay competitive in the markets out there. Or if you're going to go into business, then again, make sure you're doing your due diligence in terms of before you invest large sums of money into something, make sure that you can get a good ROI in your investment. And at the same time, stay consistent and try to, hang in there initially. Because again, we know that most businesses fail. I think they said like 80% of business fail within the first 5 years. That information, I think, comes from the Small Business Administration. And so you have to, take all that in mind, but the idea is to keep moving, never be stagnant in your opportunities and in your growth, and try to again stay ahead of the game, and don't just because you have a job in a quote unquote safe company, don't close off your options, because the more the times than not, if you really want to advance in the world, that's going to come from moving jobs. They say a person will change jobs 8 to 10 times in their career. And a lot of it's not because the job that you're in were bad, but you have to ask yourself, am I tapped out in terms of my opportunities here? Am I tapped out in terms of jobs? Because if you're with a job, at best you might get, like, unless you get a promotion, you're going to get maybe a 2% or 2.5% cost of living increase or something like that. But if you want to make major change, again, I was with Bed Bath & Beyond for almost 20 years, and I didn't really make significant bumps in my income until that. So again, for them, I could almost say that because I got comfortable there, and I'll just speak personally, because again, at that time I just had my third kid, and I was looking for stability. Prior to that, I was a contracted consultant, so I would go from job to job. But once my family really got established, I wanted more stability, so I actually took a step back, wanted benefits and things like that. And it was a very comfortable environment to work in for a lot of years. Like I could literally leave my job for sometimes there was things I had to do with taking care of my parents and whatnot. I can kind of do that and come back to my job and then have a bunch of work piled up on me. It was a very family friendly, flexible environment to work in. And so for
Mhm.
the longest time, I really didn't have a need to leave. But then once my kids started getting to college age and I was thinking about, just finances, I was thinking, yeah, well, maybe I may need to make a pivot because I'm only going to go so far with where I was. And so sometimes that may mean leaving a company, even though you're good there. It worked for your family and whatnot. Situations may change where, again, if you want a significant bump in pay, 20-30% bump in pay, you may have to move to somewhere else because again, you got to see what the market is at. And if you don't look out at the market and see what you're worth, then you may stay stagnant and not get your full, compensation there. So, that's something that as individuals, we need to be able to do. If someone is going to offer you something or whatever, and another thing, always negotiate from a standpoint of strength. Like what I've always found was that I always got calls for jobs when I had one. You know what I'm saying? It's like when I'm already employed, I'm in the strength position because if you're gonna get me to leave, you gotta make me an offer I can't refuse.
It happens to me too because every time I'm not looking for a job, my phone's getting blown up all the time.
Yeah. But somehow when you're looking for a job, people are like they ghost you or they try to lowball you or whatever, thinking, okay, I need a job. And so um always keep that in mind. So don't close your opportunities to anything. Be open to new companies, new environments, and whatnot. And I think you'll be much better off. But Pete, certainly your closing thoughts. And again, I want to thank you, Catellia, certainly for being here tonight. Certainly appreciate the you coming on, no matter how late you come. Always appreciate you being on. Certainly buenas noches to you, y tú también. And lunatic, I studied culinary arts, was going to go to college for it. Master of diesel tech became my trade to include certification in HVAC, welding, electrical, crossers into that realm. So again, be a master of many different trades and tools.
Yeah,
So again, shout
unfortunately,
out to
no
lunatic
offense,
for that.
but culinary arts are is a joke. It's a waste of money. I'll be honest. Every chef that came out there is not. They're not chefs. They're desk chefs. I'll be straight honest. And even if I'll get my own chef up. He will tell you the exact same thing I'm saying to that.
Mhm.
But to what you're saying, Paul, one thing I want to add to what you said, I want to bounce into my thoughts is know your worth. If you don't know what you're worth, you cannot. I literally went into an interview once, and they were trying to lowball me. I looked at, I'm like, I'm not going lower than. I think my number was 22 or 23. I can remember at the time. It was a few years back before COVID, and I
Mhm.
looked at, I'm like, I know my worth. If you don't come up, I will walk out of this interview. As I'm walking out of the interview, he goes, "We will match your offer then." But if you don't evolve, you don't get better. You don't change. You're gonna get stuck in the past.
Yeah.
We know people like that, unfortunately, who
Yeah.
don't want to change, don't
Yeah.
want to get better.
Mhm.
But it's time to get with the times. I always tell everybody that if they're not getting the times, they want to second to the past. I'm sorry, and like you're just gonna be left in the dust.
You'll go extend like the dinosaurs. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
need to
And
get with
that's
the times.
yeah. And like I said, if that can happen for these billion-dollar entities, these billion-dollar corporations, it
Mhm.
can certainly happen to you. And
Yeah,
so certainly, appreciate that. But again, want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Again, make sure you hit the like button both here and on hop over to the Sparta HQ network. Show some love over there as well. Certainly, we appreciate you guys being with us. Again, spending your Sundays with us. You guys could be doing a lot of different things. You got the work week coming up and whatnot, and you have to certainly get ready for that. So again, we appreciate you spending time with us tonight. But certainly for myself, Mr. Bennett, and he is.
This is Sparta!
And this is the gray area here on the Black Man Unfiltered Network, Sparta HQ Network. Stay tuned. Certainly, next time you'll see me, it'll be Wednesday on a one-on-one sports show. So we got the NBA Finals matchup set. So we'll be talking about that. And stay tuned to the Sparta HQ Network this week for again more content coming up as well. We have a lot of fun over there, and just looking forward to continuing to create great content. And we're appreciative of you. So for both of us. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care. God bless. And we will see you next time. Good night.